Hey guys! So as I have already told you, I absolutely adore this era. And the reason why our modern era is my favorite is because mostly due to the experiments in economic policy, which brings political strife to the world. I just enjoy a lot of it. So I know a lot actually about communism just in general. So let's talk about the actual philosophy first. And then we'll talk about the steps of communism, the way that Marx planned it, and why that theory really never translated the way that it was meant to, okay? So communism, in case you couldn't understand, is production owned by all the people. Everyone is supposed to be equal, like it's a classless society. There's no private property in its purest sense. Goods and services are shared equally, and like I said, there's no social classes, and this is really supposed to be the final stage of Marx's theory. So Karl Marx, as you've already read, he's that philosopher of economics. He really saw the Industrial Revolution bringing that capitalism and corporations who are making huge profits off the backs of workers without that government regulation that was necessary to protect their rights. And so he says that this is leading to class struggles between the bourgeoisie, the middle class, and the proletariat, the working class, right? And he saw this as kind of like an evolutionary step. He said that class struggle is inevitable and that eventually they're going to have some sort of a workers' revolt, okay? In fact, in sociology, this leads directly to a sociological theory called conflict theory, purported by Karl Marx himself, okay? So even sociology has a little bit of something to do with our economic systems. So capitalism merely is an evolutionary step to this, like I said. It's part of the process, okay? So when he published his manifesto, Marx and Engels, because he did have a partner, but he encouraged workers of the world to rise up as a class and defeat the wealthy capitalists so that they could begin this process, okay? The first step was that once workers have the power, they would create a new economic system called socialism, in which resources would be distributed equally. I call this the share your toys method, okay? Step one is really a dictatorship of the proletariat, as they called it, of socialism, where they would create a new government that would teach people to share their toys, okay? So like if you've ever seen little kids, and I have two little kids, so now I know this firsthand. When I used to teach this, I did not have children when I first started teaching this, and now I get to see it all the time. Is it natural for people to want to share? Not usually. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to tell our children all the time, share your toys, share your toys, share your toys, right? It's kind of ingrained in us through our basic like survival instincts that we should always be looking out for ourselves, right? And in fact, this is just kind of my argument that communism goes against human nature in general. That you could disagree with me, it's just my own argument. But I have to teach my kids that they need to share their toys. And that's what socialism is. It's the government taking control and saying everybody needs to share now, okay? And then after living with the benefits of a socialist economy, people after some time, didn't need to be right away, but people would actually learn that equality was kind of nice. And we don't need excess stuff. We don't need a surplus of things. That greed and profit really is not the be-all and end-all, and that equality works very well in our civilization, okay? The third step is eventually the need for the government would fade away and people would live by sharing their resources. And Marx envisioned this final goal of workers' revolution as communism, a system in which there was classless society without any government. And this is where we get that idea of communes, that everyone would be in their own little specific, geographic area where everybody does what they can and takes what they need and only what they need, and you don't have any extra. That's from each according to his ability to each according to his need, okay? And so he says, guess what? Then we won't need any revolutions anymore, because we will now be a society without any government, without any classes, and it will basically be living in some sort of utopian paradise. Now, if you're like, so where did Karl Marx go wrong, okay? I'm gonna take you back a sec. This step right here, okay? There was no revolution. He may have called for people to start a revolution against our wealthy capitalists, but it never actually happened, okay? So those workers never revolted against the middle class and against those wealthy capitalists, never uprooted anything. And so really communism just never worked out the way that Marx thought it would. And the other problem is, even if we get socialism and we enforce it from a government, who wants to let go of control? Who's going to let the government fade away? Okay. Again, it just goes with my own beliefs, because of course they are my own beliefs, but I really don't believe that people are naturally selfless people. Not to say that we can't do selfless acts, we certainly can, but if it came down to it, most of the time we go for our own survival. And people also really love power. And so, when we see people like Stalin, for instance, in the 20th century, come to power, he does not want to give up that power so that eventually we can fade away and have a governmentless society. Of course not, right? He's a dictator. He wants the power. And so the problem is we get dictators in power in Russia, or should I say at that point the Soviet Union, and they never let go. And some would even argue today that even though communism is not really what's being practiced in Russia anymore, that there still is that kind of authoritarian dictatorship type of government going on. Okay, so anyways, I really enjoy this. I just kind of wanted to give you a really fast and hopefully more simplified version of where communism was supposed to go and why it didn't translate. So let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. Oops, sorry.